So I recently caught Lon Chaney Jr. in a Western, Only the Valiant, with Gregory Peck. And seeing him again reminded me that I need to go back and finish reviewing the Inner Sanctum series. You know, the ones that are sort of like Twilight Zone episodes, a little soapy, and they all generally feature Lon Chaney Jr. as a different character with some sort of strange and unusual situation, usually a murder that needs to be solved. He's loved by all these gorgeous women, and I decided to jump back into this series, and I am at episode 3, Dead Man's Eyes, from 1944. Now, this one starred Lon Chaney Jr. as an artist who is beloved by gorgeous women and who, in a freak accident, is blinded. Or was it an accident? Well, this one was a fun mystery. There's a murder involved. Sort of goes all over the place, but I still enjoyed it a lot. I'll give an overview of the film, spoiler-free, and then offer some closing thoughts. Well, the films in this series open up with the spirit of the Inner Sanctum. It's actor David Hoffman's head inside a crystal ball, welcoming us to the story, kind of tells us things like, "Yes, even you could commit murder." Me? Really? Well, the film begins, and we're inside an artist's studio, and there's painter Dave Stewart, played here by Lon Chaney Jr., and he is painting the model Tanya, played by lovely actress Aquanetta. I've seen her previously in films like Tarzan and the Leopard Woman. Now he's done for the day. He tells her she can go and change, and then he goes off to his medicine cabinet. His eyes are dry, and he wants to get some eye drops. Now, his girlfriend Heather shows up. She's played here by actress Jean Parker. Now, watching her, maybe it's just me, I couldn't help but think that she sort of bore a resemblance to Evelyn Ankers, who also acted with Lon in the Wolfman film. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But the two of them, they head off to town to have dinner. Now later, a Dr. Alan Bittaker shows up. He's a friend of Dave. He's played here by actor Paul Kelly. And while they stand around and they're talking, Tanya heads off to the medicine cabinet. And she may be a little bit jealous of the attention that Heather is giving to Dave, and she switches around some of his bottles. Well, Alan seems interested in Tanya and wants to take her out in the town, but she seems disinterested because, she's far too crazy for Lon Chaney Jr. Well, once they leave, he goes to the medicine cabinet to get his eye meds, completely unaware that he has grabbed a different bottle, one of acetic acid, and oh no, he applies it right to his eyes. Well, he has a really dramatic reaction, as you would expect, to having acid in his eyes. It does raise the question, why would you have a bottle of eye drops right there next to acid in a similar sized bottle, but whatever. He calls the doctor. Now, meanwhile, Heather, she has just given the brush off to some other guy, Nick, actor George Meeker. Now, I've seen him in other films. Interestingly enough, he was in another Tarzan film too. He was in Tarzan's Revenge. And he doesn't take well to Heather's rejection. But the drama is interrupted as she gets a call and hears about Dave's accident. So the doctor tells him that Dave has lost his vision and that he has been sedated and they're going to see what they can do to help him. Now it's around here that Tanya confesses that she was the one who had moved the bottles by mistake. And Alan defends her because, well, I think he's got a thing for her. Well, Dave returns home and his eyes are all bandaged up. And everybody tries to be nice and civil to him, but he just lashes out in anger and then calms down again. Now, the doctor tells Dave that there is hope. They have a corneal transplant operation that they can try doing. It's kind of cool, actually. I didn't think they could do stuff like that way back in 1944, but I guess they did. Now, the doctor tells them, though, that the problem is that they need to find a donor. So we've established early on that Dave has been blinded, but there might be hope from an experimental surgery with lots of people in the room to hear about this and how a donor is needed. But who could it be? So later we see Dave, and he's sitting there. He's got kind of the heavy makeup around his eyes, and he's really upset. And Tanya's there. She still loves the guy, and he tells her to cover up that unfinished painting. He's done with it, and he snaps at her, and, he's just got some anger issues here now. A little bit later, he meets with Heather and releases her from their engagement. But she is so in love with him, and she just won't stand for it. And he tells her that, well, he's in love with Tanya instead. And, well, Heather leaves. Her heart is broken, of course. Now, later, Dave is passed out. He's got some empty booze bottles and ciggies. And Dr. Hayden shows up to talk with him. Tells him that he's old and that he has bequeathed his corneas to Dave upon his death. Now, they start to fight over his relationship with Tanya, as he blames her for his blindness. So he leaves right as Tanya goes to embrace him, as she has dedicated her life to him. Now, Alan shows up again. Now, he's interested in Tanya, and he confesses his love for her. Well, she likes him, but she can only think about Dave, and she leaves him because, like I've said, all the beautiful women just go crazy for Lon Chaney Jr. Alan then talks with Dave and tells him that he was pretty rotten in how he treated Dr. Hayden and that he should go and talk with him. So Alan agrees, he leaves, and Dave thinks to himself that if the doctor dies, he might be able to see again. Well, we cut over to Nick, and he's still interested in Heather. Now that Dave is out of the picture, he wants her to consider him again, but she still loves Dave. Okay, so for those keeping score at home, Tanya and Heather love Dave. Alan loves Tanya. And Nick loves Heather. Everybody got it? Okay, here's where things pick up a little bit. Heather heads over to go see her dad, the doctor. And oh no, there's Dave. He's already there. And he has apparently discovered that Dr. Hayden is dead. And Dave has blood on his hands. Oh no! But he pleads innocence. Now Heather sees this and is convinced that Dave is guilty. However, the doctors are still going to go ahead and do the transplant of the corneas. So Alan shows up at the hospital, and it's here we're introduced to Captain Drury. He's this investigator played by Thomas Gomez. I've seen him before in films like Ride the Pink Horse with Robert Montgomery. So he suspects something fishy is going on with this murder. Now, apparently at the morgue, they have the eyes ready. They're in this little metal container. But before they can be transported, Tanya has taken the container, thinking that maybe she can hide it away and keep Dave blind so that he'll be dependent on her. Well, Alan meets with her. She hands over the container and realizes it was wrong, and Alan gets them to the hospital just in time and drops them off. So yeah, there's sort of all this stuff going on at the same time. It's a little crazy, but anyhow, the surgery takes place, and obviously they're not going to show too much. But what little we do see is kind of gross and creepy. You've got the trays of surgical tools, you've got the eerie music, and we see Dave. He's kind of in a dreamlike sequence of the recent events, and he's told, "You must not move your head." They finally do get the surgery done. They remove the bandages, and Dave is still blind. Now they try to reassure him that it might take some time, that it's too early to tell. But Dave seems really broken up about it, as you would expect. Now he finds out from his friend Alan that both Tanya and Nick, apparently, are also suspects in Dr. Hayden's murder. So Dave gets home and he finds a threaded nail in his pocket. What does it mean, and where did it come from? Well, he thinks he found it by the body. Well, Captain Drury shows up again, and he has more questions for Dave. And he also has questions about Tanya and Alan. But Dave is still his primary suspect, it would seem. He also wants to know what caused those eyes to have been taken away mysteriously and then returned again. Now, Drury suspects that maybe Tanya did it, but Dave doesn't believe it, and he leaves. Now, Nick, meanwhile, pleads with Heather about his innocence. Alan enters, and he wants to talk, and there's lots of talking in this film. Yeah. Well, Nick leaves, and Alan pleads with Heather to go and see Dave. Now, meanwhile, Dave is sitting there. He's doing that internal monologue thing, and he suspects that Tanya might be spying on him. He shows the threaded screw to Tanya and asks, "Does this mean anything?" But she says no and leaves in a hurry, as she is late for a date. A date with Alan. Well, it seems that she hates Heather, who still loves Dave, and she's jealous. Now, a little bit later, Tanya calls Heather, thinking that she knows who killed her father. But suddenly, someone sneaks into the room. But who is it? Well, what is going on? Well, I did my best to try to summarize this one, but boy, for a short film, there was a lot going on at the same time. Now, with very little time left in the film, I'm going to just leave this here. I'm not going to spoil the ending. Will Dave ever get his vision back? And which one of these beautiful women will he wind up with? And what's the story with Alan and Nick and Captain Drury? Well, you'll need to see the ending for yourself. Well, let me wrap up here with some closing thoughts and analysis. Dead Man's Eyes was released in 1944. It was produced by Universal and was directed by Reginald Leborg, who also directed the first two entries of this series. He also directed a number of Joe Palooka films, which I was just reading about, and I've been meaning to research for this channel. They look interesting to me. Anyhow, this was the third in a series of 6 films in Universal's Inner Sanctum series. They were released from 1943 to 1945. In one of my earlier reviews of the Inner Sanctum series, I discussed in a little more detail how basically these were all in a series produced by Universal based on the Inner Sanctum old-time radio program that ran from 1941 to 1952. And you can find a lot of the audio for these on the Internet Archive, and they feature voices of many legends like Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Orson Welles, and so on. Anyhow, I've been slowly working my way through the 6 Inner Sanctum films in the series, and I do hope to eventually review all of them. So my thoughts on the film is that, while I enjoyed it, it was probably the most soapy of the series and maybe a little confusing to follow. But I did like the idea of a murder mystery set around a character who has been unexpectedly blinded, with all of the main characters seemingly have some sort of motive to want to kill Dr. Hayden, so that when he does die, the film kind of keeps you guessing. It was a good whodunit, I thought. It is a short film. It's a little over an hour, and yet the story and characters, they get developed enough that it does draw you in. It keeps you guessing, and you're never really completely sure who the killer is. And, I always enjoy seeing Lon Chaney Jr. in these films. He's a legend. He was the Wolfman. He played the Mummy in a couple films. And even if he does ham it up a little bit in this film, I still enjoyed it. And, he loses his sight and everybody starts showing him pity. And he just flies off the rails and yells. And then he gets his composure again. Now, he too was a suspect in the murder, but he's a hard character to read in the film, as he seems to spend so much time crying, drinking, smoking, and bemoaning his situation. Maybe he did it, or maybe it was one of his friends, all of whom seem to have some sort of valid motive. Now, as mentioned, I just find it amusing in this series how all of these beautiful women seem to just love Lon Chaney Jr.'s character. I can't help but wonder if he was maybe slightly involved behind the scenes and, writing the story for the film. Now it's important that we get a number of gorgeous women in this film and that they're all crazy for me. Now, while watching this, for the first time, having never seen it before, I was thinking in the back of my head that, maybe they're going to do a gimmick where Dave gets the cornea transplant and that maybe with them he can see, what the murdered man saw, but, like a psychic vision or something. But no, they didn't do that. There was a similar film, I think it came out in 2008, called The Eye. It had Jessica Alba, and she had eyes transplanted that retained memories of a murderer. And no, nothing like that happens here. Maybe that was too far-fetched of a theme for the 1940s. I don't know. And by the way, I've never seen the movie The Eye, but my wife has, and she says it's a decent psychological thriller if you're into that type of film. Not the type of film I would watch and review on this channel, though. Another observation about the film was that you had Thomas Gomez, who plays the pushy detective. He thinks there's something weird going on with the murder and kind of keeps on Dave's case. His detective character reminded me a lot of J. Carrol Naish, who played a similar detective character in the first Inner Sanctum Mystery, calling Dr. Death. Although I thought Naish was a little more engaging in that first film, maybe because he had a little more screen time than Thomas Gomez did in this one. And my three fans know I try to keep my reviews positive and say good things about actors and so on. And I usually keep to that, but I do have to point out that actress Aquanetta, okay, while a very lovely actress, just isn't really the greatest actress here. In her scenes, just being honest, the dialogue just felt a little bit wooden, almost like she was just reading it. I don't know, watch the film for yourself and let me know if you agree.
I understand. I'll be going now. Good night.
But those are only a couple gripes, and honestly, I enjoyed the film. The mystery of who murdered the doctor was a compelling one, to see you through to the end of the film. And I enjoyed Lon Chaney Jr., although he does seem to get a little carried away with his emotions in the film. It's still great to see him here again. So, will he resort to murder to get his sight back, or was it one of his friends? Well, check out the film and see for yourself. Dead Man's Eyes from 1944. It was an enjoyable murder mystery in the Inner Sanctum series. And yeah, maybe it does get a little soapy, but it was still a fun whodunit. And it's definitely one worth checking out.